What's up? This is Cody.
And this is Austin from Hinder. You're watching Fuse on Demand.
Get it when you want it.
Well, I think Thursday's been talking about stopping being a full-time band and stopping actually being a band at all for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We actually probably wouldn't have come to a decision so quickly, except that we thought that it would be kind of not cool of us to be like, yeah, we did a few shows and now we're not doing anything, see you later. And we all kind of felt also like under the circumstances that we decided to split, that booking a lot of other stuff after what we have commitments for already would have been, it wouldn't have been something that anybody wanted to do really at this point. But also we've always kind of been the kind of guys that like to honor the commitments that we've made, and so we were like, you know what, there's not a lot of acrimony, and you know, we really do love each other. It's just become impossible with a few things that have changed this year. It's kind of like a joy to get to play these last few shows together, you know, and really get to appreciate like our brothers. You know, we've been together for 13 years. We were on the phone on Monday talking about, like, so do we want to do this? And each person kind of giving their own, you know, I think we all knew that we were going to do it, but each person giving their own thoughts on what they love about the band, how they still love each other, and how, you know, they still want to make music together sometime at some point. If it's all of us, some of us, you know, if it's called Thursday, if it's not called Thursday, at some point we'd still like to be involved. And so we were having this conversation of to what degree, you know, we wanted to make an announcement of, and, you know, as we were deciding, like, actually going by the name Thursday and calling this Thursday, this thing that is no longer really Thursday, you know, that would be a mistake. Right then, somebody's like, look at Thrice.net or whatever, like, this is too funny. These guys just split the same day that we're talking about it. And it's just always one of those things where we had just finished making A City by the Light Divided, and it was really different for us. It was really, you know, had a lot of space in it, and it was really kind of wacky, like that we used Dave Fridman, the Flaming Lips producer, and had all these sounds that were really surprising. And we had just finished it. You know, nobody had heard it, but we were really proud of it. And the Thrice record came out like a week later. It was like totally different for them, and it was like more melodic. It sounded like Doves or something, you know, and we were just cracking up that we're always on this parallel career path with Thrice. And even before we had ever met Thrice, we'd play California and the stage hands would be like, you guys know Thrice? I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, you act a lot like them personally. You guys would get along real well. You should meet them. And when we met them finally and told them that story, they're like, that's so funny. Every time we would play the East Coast, people would be like, you guys know Thursday? Kind of remind me of those guys. And so it's like one of those things that we've never coordinated anything, but somehow our brains just work in tandem, you know? It's been really tough. Like when we started rehearsing for these shows, I had like a 29 song set list or something, and our songs aren't like NoFX songs, you know what I mean? They're like 5 minutes each. So we started being like, dude, 2 hours? Like, are you kidding? We can't play 2 hours. Like, you're always jumping off the drums and doing stuff. Like, we're gonna die if we play 2 hours. So it was hard to cut down. It's one of those things where we played Full Collapse in its entirety so much this year that we were like, you know, it's like as much as that's like the big record, we should only play a handful of songs off of it, because most people that really love us have already seen us play that record this year. So it was like conscious to play more off War All the Time, which is something we haven't concentrated on as much in a while, and A City by the Light Divided. And of course there's new songs thrown in. Even though I love the record, Common Existence is the one that got shorted the most. We play one song off of that for the set list, but yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think we'll probably end up changing from night to night too, and especially like if we do a New York show, then the New Jersey show will have like a pretty different set list. We've discussed whether or not to record some of the last stuff that we've written or not, or whether to do it now or to kind of wait until we've had a moment. I mean, even rehearsing for these shows, it's kind of like, you know, Niagara Falls in the middle of practice, everybody wiping their eyes like, wow, like these songs are great actually, you know what I mean? It's gonna be so hard, and I've played some of them over 1,000 times. I've played Understanding in a Car Crash probably like 1,400 times, and still, it still has power for me. So it's kind of one of those things where we've discussed like, do we wanna record some of these last songs that we have, or is it better to just like leave them and then come back? Like Glassjaw had unrecorded songs for like 6 years while they broke up. And then when they got back together, the first thing they did was to record all these old songs that they had written, which I thought was so strange, but now I understand why. You know what I mean? It's like, until you're in that position, you can second guess it, but you never really know why. It's really hard to say like one single thing that I'd be most proud of for Thursday. I have to say that probably this year celebrating Full Collapse 10 years later and having it still making impact on people is something that I never expected and never could have even like dreamed of, and so that feels really good. There are lots of little things throughout the years, like touring with The Cure, collaborating with the Buzzcocks on stage, you know, playing Reading Festival on the main stage in front of people. Stuff like that is like something that I'll always keep with me. But for what I'm most proud of, like legacy-wise, it's the fact that my two favorite Thursday records came out 10 years apart to the week. Like that's just, I'm really proud that we got to end on one that I love as much as the one that kind of started our band. So I'm glad that we went out on a high note and we didn't just like decide to break up after we finally made like a clunker that everybody hates. That would be the worst, you know? Before Thursday started, I was doing these basement shows. That's kind of all I thought I would really do, was be somebody who was like a supporter of music. I never thought I'd play music. You know, to me, it's just enough to be involved with people that I think are really talented and sweet and making passionate, sincere music. That's what that's what I wanted to be involved in, was to be there, part of the support network that makes it happen. And then when Thursday started playing, it was just to be a part of those shows, just to kind of get to play with our friends and some of our heroes and stuff like that. Around the time that we were starting, the Bouncing Souls had just really like started to do national touring, and were never home in New Brunswick. So they were kind of this band that we were all super proud of, and we knew that they were our band. That we knew that they were the New Brunswick band. You know, they had done all these shows before. There were all these legendary stories of them throwing toilets off the roof of their house and just being crazy guys. To me, one of the bands that I connected the most to was Lifetime. You know, theme song for a New Brunswick basement show. It's like, to me, that song meant so much. You know, even though it's just a dumb song about playing in the basement, it also represented kind of like the paradigm of what was going on at the time, and the fact that we didn't need anybody else's approval, that our culture was self-contained, and it wasn't exclusive, it just was, it didn't need anything from anyone. And that was a huge inspiration. And then probably the band that's most overlooked from New Brunswick is You and I, this sort of really heavy, sincere, emotional band. They're totally what I wanted Thursday to be like. We were never going to be as heavy as them, and we were never going to be as raw. There were a lot of things of theirs that we couldn't emulate, even if we tried, and for the better, you know, because we ended up becoming our own band. But we played one of You and I's last shows as one of our first. I ended up living with them, and Tom from You and I did all the screams on Full Collapse. So he was like a surrogate member and kind of also like a mentor, and they're just a totally underrated, overlooked band. And then recently, there was this joke that people were calling it the wave, you know, that they were calling it like the last great wave of emo, screamo, whatever. And it's this thing where it was returned to like this crazy DIY ethic of doing basements and living rooms and bookstores and stuff like that. And some of the bands were just like spoken word, like a band like La Dispute, that were telling stories. And to me, I love that, because narrative was one of the big things that I wanted Thursday to tackle. I wanted to change the perspective of the narrative. I wanted to have the narrative feel more inclusive and not be about like I, me, you know, things like that. So La Dispute I find really inspiring that way. I'm so proud that they're friends of ours and that they look up to us and cite us as an influence. And for me, probably one of the biggest torchbearers now that I really feel like I got to pass that torch along to is a band called Touche Amore from LA. Jeremy, when he was much younger, was a big Thursday fan and was always supporting us. And when he gave me, I had seen some of his other bands that he played guitar in, and was always like, you know, I'll come see you guys because you've always been so great to us. But then he gave me the Touche Amore demo, and I was floored at how good it was, you know. It reminded me of like American Nightmare and all these great bands that I loved when I was younger. And I had the privilege of putting out their first record, and now they're on Death Wish and do all these other things. But to see, like, I was just in Australia and I saw them play in front of like 500 kids who knew every word. It was just so real, you know what I mean? They had never tried to make it big. It was such a passionate response. It reminded me of when Full Collapse was first out, and I just felt like it doesn't matter that these bands actually sound nothing like Thursday, because that's never what was important. You know what I mean? It was the heart and the spirit of the thing. It was breaking down the walls between crowd and band, you know, making sure that everybody knew that the promoter and that the kid selling zines and the band and the tech and the kid in the front row singing along, like that they were all on the same level. We played a show in New Jersey at Giant Stadium with Radiohead, Bright Eyes, Elliott Smith shortly before he died, and I just remember watching all these bands that I loved, and some of them that I grew up on, some of them that I was friends with, and feeling like we belonged, not like we were just kind of encroaching on somebody else's turf. And it was pouring rain. It was crazy downpour. They asked us if we even wanted to go on because there was an inch of water on stage, and it was lightning out. And I just looked at like the 2,000 people huddled in front of the stage with umbrellas and ponchos and raincoats, and I thought, like, are you kidding? They can do it, why can't we do it? You know, and that was a real high point. One time it was Bike Week in Daytona, and we were just trying to find somewhere that we could sleep in the van without having a million, motorcycles revving their engines. And so we found this empty parking lot that there were no bikers in, and we were like, oh, this is great, no bikers, this is incredible. We go to sleep soundly. Sun comes out and we're hearing like all these revving engines, giant revving engines. And I remember thinking, like, they have some crazy bike. And it turned out that we weren't in a parking lot, that we had pulled onto a small airstrip. And so there were planes getting warmed up to go flying for the day, like prop planes that had a kind of like crazy motorcycle sound to them. And I remember Steve being like, we gotta get out of here, we're on an airstrip. So that was, that was in the pre-9/11 days of us not being in Guantanamo for being parked on an airstrip. A more recent low point would be on the Taste the Chaos tour in like 2009. We were playing Canada and it was snowing and it was crazy. It was so cold, and we ended up playing a town that it doesn't even need a name. Can't remember it. That's how memorable it was. But we were in this giant old movie theater, beautiful old movie theater, probably held 1,800 people. And by the time we played, there had to be 75 or 80 people in the venue in this snowy, crazy, kind of Hoth Planet version of a country. And I remember getting just a little too drunk before we played. Instead of getting loose, I started talking about how if it's supposed to be a movie theater, what kind of a movie they were watching right now, if it was a tragic comedy, or if it was a disaster film, or what was it, And at one point I said we were Cobra Starship, and somebody actually went to our merch booth and asked how come Thursday wasn't playing tonight. We were like 10 songs in, like they couldn't tell that we weren't Cobra Starship. That was the most depressing part, was that somebody who actually liked us was like, I don't know, I guess it's not Thursday. Spent our whole 20s in it, and now we're in our 30s ending it. So it's really, it's definitely like who I am as a person has been shaped completely by being in Thursday. And for me and Tucker, we're both only children. So it was, 13 years of living with somebody in a van or a bus is enough to, now I know what it's like to have brothers. That's been kind of, for me, the biggest part of it, aside from getting to, experience making art and living dreams and all those things that are incredible too. Really, it's just to really understand companionship and understand better people. Before I actually, when I was a freshman in college, before I started the band, I had a really hard time looking people in the eyes because I was so shy. And so Thursday's really cured me of being shy, which has been like a great thing that I get to keep with me always from it. But also, just making such incredible music with such great people, people who want to give and aren't like, like my guys, they don't look into a situation of what angle of how much they can take from it, and I love that. I love that about my guys, and I feel like it's a culture we cultivated together, in the band, of how to treat people, and I really love it. We would always do these holiday shows, and we were talking about maybe just getting together the whole band and calling out any Thursday fans and going out sort of in that week between Christmas and Thanksgiving and working at shelters and doing stuff like that together. Maybe like playing acoustic at night with all the kids. And Thursday I'd always encourage people to get more involved in nonprofits. And I think to me that's like the era of punk that I grew up in that was so socially active and socially conscious. Like I'd like to give that to people. And to find out, that kids that grew up with us back then are now working in so many great fields, whether it's ACLU or Amnesty International, all these places that they're working. It makes me really proud that we were the band that they grew up on. And I'd love to continue to give that to people, because I think once you kind of find a way to give of yourself, it's like the best thing that you can discover in yourself. So yeah, that's like one thing that we've been talking about. I mean, we were just talking about like how to keep Thursday, not even as far as a legacy, but how to keep the guys involved with each other. Because you go different paths in your life. We'll have to get different jobs or do different projects. Even trying to figure out how to make it like a mandatory meetup every year, for us.